This video is sponsored by Xolo. Living in Spain and wanted to get started with entrepreneurship or self-employment? In this video, I'll tell you everything you need to know about setting up and managing the day-to-day activities and obligations of being an autónomo in Spain. It can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Let's get right into it. So, an autónomo in Spain is used to describe someone who is a sole trader or who is self-employed, essentially. When it comes to who can be an autónomo, the answer is pretty much anybody. If you're a Spanish or EU national, you essentially have the unrestricted right to register and operate as a self-employed person in Spain. When it comes to nationals of non-EU or non-EEA countries, then it's a little bit different. So you do need a visa to be able to register as a self-employed person. And for the majority of people, that's probably going to be an entrepreneur or self-employed visa, which allows them to undertake what is known as trabajo por cuenta propia in Spanish. For people going down that route, there's generally a business plan required to be presented as part of the visa application process to show how your business or your activity adds value to the Spanish economy. Now, there's also some people who are on the digital nomad visa as well, who for their circumstances will end up registering as a self-employed person in Spain, but I won't go into that in too much detail in this video. What I will say though is that if you're a third country national on a temporary residence visa that allows you trabajo por cuenta ajena, essentially to be employed by a company, that visa will not allow you to undertake self-employed work whilst you're in Spain. That restriction is essentially eliminated when you become a permanent resident in Spain, but during those first 5 years, if you're on an employment visa, then you will not be allowed to undertake self-employed work. So now let's get round to the registration process. And there's a few different forms that need to be filled out here. The first form being what you need to submit to the tax authority, known as Hacienda in Spain. The 36 model is essentially the standard model that people will fill out. One of the important things that you'll need to keep in mind as well when you're registering is that you'll need to give an IAE, sometimes known as an epígrafe, essentially a code that identifies what type of activity you're doing. What category of business essentially does your activity fall into? And it's very important that you get this epígrafe right as well, because it can determine things like your VAT liabilities that you need to pay, sales tax, things like what expenses are and aren't deductible and how much can be deducted. Because obviously getting things like this wrong can cause problems for you later. You could end up paying more or less tax than you really owe, and that's of course a problem that you don't want to have. You'll need to register with the Social Security as well, and the form that is used for the Social Security is the form TA.0521. That's essentially what you'll need to fill out and submit to the Social Security. All right, so at this point, you're all registered, you're signed up, and you're ready to get started. So what happens now? So you'll start doing business, making sales, collecting money. But of course, to do things the correct and proper way, you'll need to invoice for your services. It's a new compliance measure, let's say, called verifactu in Spanish. The invoice has to be verifiable to the Spanish tax authorities. They need to somehow be able to verify the authenticity of that invoice, the information of who's being billed on it and the amount that they've been billed, so that they can cross-check it with their systems. So it's very important, therefore, to work with an accounting service or a gestor that offers verifactu compliant invoicing software. And with these business invoices, expenses that you make, transactions that you make as a self-employed person, you're going to need to keep a repository, essentially, of all those documents for purposes of upcoming declarations. And with that, I want to introduce this video sponsor, Xolo. Xolo is a 100% digital, all-in-one platform for autonomos and self-employed people. They'll allow you to manage invoices, expense reports, general administration, and tax declarations from one simple point, as well as being verifactu compliant, as we mentioned just before. With Xolo, you'll have access to both English and Spanish-speaking accounting experts who will be able to guide you through any queries and concerns you may have regarding your situation, whether it's making sure that you have the correct data when you sign up as a self-employed person, to submitting your tax declarations on time and correctly, and also general accounting queries that you may have around deductible expenses or how to invoice a certain service or good as well. Signing up for Xolo is completely free, and they have a range of different pricing plans and offers available for when you are ready to start using the service. So whether you're operating in Spain or you're operating internationally as well, you are covered by the different options they have. And Xolo exists to help you have a simple and painless experience when it comes to handling your obligations as an autónomo, free of headaches and stress. So if you're looking to get started as an autónomo and you think that Xolo could be a good partner for you, then be sure to check out my link in the video description, where you'll get a €50 bonus if you use the service for at least 2 months. So thank you, Xolo, for sponsoring this video. And with that, let's move on to the final point. So you're set up, you're registered, you've got your invoicing and accounting under control. Now you've got to think about what are your ongoing obligations as a self-employed person in Spain. The first obligation you'll have comes back to something we mentioned in the first section of the video, which is related to Social Security. as a self-employed person, you'll be paying Social Security on a monthly basis based on the amount of income you earn. Now, the more you earn, the more you pay in Social Security. But actually, what you'll see is that the more you earn, the percentage of your income that Social Security makes up also decreases. So the lower end of the scale, Social Security takes up a bigger portion of your income, but as you earn more, it represents a smaller percentage of your income. And there's three things to keep in mind here as well. The first being that you can change which Social Security quota you pay every month based on what you earn. You can change that up to a certain number of times in the year based on your revenue growing or decreasing. Second point to keep in mind is that the government did announce plans to raise the Social Security quotas and the amount of Social Security paid per earning brackets and per earning threshold. Did a video about this about a month ago, so I'll link that up at the top if you want to go and check that out. And the third thing to keep in mind that new autónomos, that's to say you're signing up for an autónomo for the first time or for the first time in a certain number of years and you meet certain criteria, you'll have access to what is known as the tarifa plana, which essentially allows you to pay a flat rate of 80 euros per month during the first year of Social Security. And so it's intended to be an incentive to get people to sign up and register and start a business as an autónomo with a lower Social Security cost than the standard bracket system. So something important that I'm going to explain a little bit about now, which is one of your responsibilities as an autónomo in Spain, is regarding VAT. And so this is important because under normal circumstances, if we take a customer and a Spanish business, the Spanish business essentially acts as a collection agent of the sales tax for the tax authorities in Spain, which the customer pays on their purchase. The business then collects and then essentially passes on to the tax authorities in Spain. And at the same time, if you make business expenses as an autónomo and you're charged VAT, you can also use that to offset VAT that you have collected from customers. What is different here is that if we say the self-employed person is in Spain, but the customer is in France, for example, French VAT rates are not the same as Spanish VAT rates. And it would also be owed to the French tax authorities, not the Spanish tax authorities. And so as a result, the Spanish self-employed person or business doesn't have to collect that VAT, but they do have to essentially pass that liability onto the customer so that they pay it in their home country, essentially. The same would also be true in the opposite direction. If the Spanish self-employed person is purchasing goods or services from, let's say, another business in Germany, for example, then the German company wouldn't collect VAT in Germany. They would simply pass on the reverse charge to the business or self-employed person in Spain, who would then pay that to the Spanish tax authorities. The next obligation that every autónomo has as well are quarterly income declarations, known as the 130 form or the Modelo 130 in Spanish. So to help you understand how this works, when you're an employee in Spain and you're paid a salary by a company, that company withholds income tax known as IRPF for you based on what you've earned up to that point through the year and what they project you to earn, essentially. Now, as an autónomo, you're earning income directly from clients. And so essentially the income tax that needs to be withheld is captured sometimes on the invoices, but that is essentially then passed on to the tax authorities once a quarter based on your earnings through the 130 form declaration. This will then be finalized in the next year's full annual tax declaration. So once the year is done, all the activities are closed. When everyone is kind of declaring their income for the year, autónomos will do the same and their autónomo income will be included in their annual tax declaration along with any deductible expenses as well. Now, the two other obligations you may have as an autónomo are the Modelo 303, the 303 form. That's the VAT declaration. So any VAT you've collected from customers offset by any VAT you've paid on purchases is then passed on to the tax authorities in Spain. You'll also need to do a couple of informative declarations as well when it comes to VAT. The 390 form or the 390 form, which is an annual summary of all those VAT transactions. And if we're doing business across the EU, as we said as well, then you've got the 349, the 349 form, which essentially is an informative report of what transactions you've done with other EU businesses, customers, suppliers, etc., just for the knowledge of the tax authorities. And so while that does seem like a lot of obligations, declarations, and it is important to get them right, they do usually typically only come up once a quarter. So quarter end is kind of when you need to get those declarations right and make sure that, through that time, you're keeping good track of your invoices, your expenses, so that when the time comes around, you can declare them. And in the majority of cases, you need to submit those declarations by the 20th day of the month following the close. So January to March, for example, would need to be submitted by the 20th of April. Again, this all very much depends on the form, so do be sure to check that when you're doing them. All right, there you go, guys. That's the complete guide to getting set up and started as an Autónomo in Spain. I hope you find that interesting and helpful. As I say, remember to check out the link for Xolo in the video description as well. Leave a comment and let me know if you're thinking about becoming an Autónomo in Spain. If you are or have been an Autónomo in Spain, I'd love to hear how your experience has been. And if you like this video and you want to see more videos about Spain or about entrepreneurship, then be sure to check out these two videos here. So next time, I'll see you on the next one, and let's get this money.